As I said 2 weeks ago when David was here, the thing that David said is we talked after church, and subsequent to that, as he was talking about church, he said, Mark, he said, what a church, what a church the Neon First Church of God is. And he said the Spirit, he said the joy that was evident, and he talked about the children and youth. He said, what a blessing that was to come to church. And it seems like anybody who comes to visit us, even from in our own community, for those who come from all over the country and from Canada, that's one thing that we hear a lot about, is the excitement that they see in our children and youth. So I want to thank all of our children and youth for being here so consistently, serving and ministering together, and for the moms and the dads and the aunts and the uncles and the grandpas and grandmas. And you who have friends and little children in your neighborhood who take time to be a good example to a child or youth. It will pay lifetime dividends and results. Madonna was talking about a young lady who came to Bible school, and Madonna had to put her car seat in the church van to enable her to come. What a testimony that is. And she said that she's now taking her own child to Bible school and has rich memories. So what a powerful reminder of God's mercy and His grace. This coming week, we're going to be talking about Daniel. And I was encouraged to dress like Daniel, but I didn't fashion myself to be a 600 BC kind of dresser, so I tried to make my hair maybe look a little bit more like the custom. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to be an exciting week of discovery and learning, not only for our children and for our youth, but as I said, for everybody who's going to be a part of this ministry team. And that's really what it is. Don't you? I like the concept of team. And I want to thank Karen Wilder again, who's in our back. Karen, can you hear us? She did an amazing job of leading our team this last year. And if you hadn't heard already, our church won the County Church Softball League. So thank you. Congratulations. We had a celebration here on Friday night, and I said, what a great and amazing group of people I'm so blessed to pastor. I love the concept of team. I love working together, and it's amazing to see the transformative power of Christ working in your life. I feel like a church is a team, and you really have to stick together even during the tough times. Well, the main character we're going to be talking about is Daniel. How many of you feel like you have a pretty good understanding of the life of Daniel? Daniel was a young man, as we know, when Babylonia came in and they overtook Jerusalem and the Jewish people. And many of the Jewish people were taken into captivity into this foreign land. Now, I can only begin to imagine that. I can't imagine somebody forcibly taking me someplace that I wouldn't want to go. I've had the privilege of going and coming pretty much where I've chosen to. Now, I believe God called me to Neon, Kentucky. I believe it was a calling, and it was a willful decision between me and God. I'm so thankful that He brought me to Neon, Kentucky. But it might have been a different story if He would have, if I would have been forced to come someplace, whether it was Neon or Lexington or New York City. Can you just imagine what it must have been to be a person in slavery? I've been reading a lot this summer for a class that I'm taking about the consequences of slavery for African Americans. And once again, my heart, even though this was taking place 100, 200, 300 years ago, I thought, wow, how horrible it was that anybody would oppress somebody else in that way. So Daniel was taken into captivity. But Daniel must have had some abilities that the ruler sensed. And so Daniel was brought into the king's court. He was a part of the court serving the king, or the Pharaoh, the king, Nebuchadnezzar, at that time. And as we see the story unfold, there's some pretty remarkable things that happened to Daniel in the course of his stay in Babylonia. The first thing that happened is that he and his three friends, who we come to know as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as they came into captivity, they were challenged about what to eat. Now, why was this so important? Why was it so important that when Daniel and his three friends were challenged to eat? Well, the fact of the matter is that some of the food that the other servants were given was considered unclean. Now, what was unclean? It was food that was either had been previously dedicated to the idols. It was a system in which the Jews tried to eat as much purity as possible to keep their bodies and their mind and their spirit focused on God. And so as one of the king's leaders comes and he says, this is what you're going to eat, Daniel was forced to make a decision. So look at what he says in verse 8 of chapter 1. It says, but Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission to not defile himself in this way. Now God had caused the official to show favor and sympathy to Daniel. But the official told Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has signed your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other men your age? And the king would then have my head because of you. Daniel then said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, who have the best of the best in the Babylonian, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to do this and tested them for 10 days. What was the result? It says at the end of the 10 days they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. Now, so what does that mean? You know, what is it? What's its relevancy for today? I love it from the standpoint of is that Daniel had to make decisions. Daniel was faced with choices to make. And Daniel spoke a talk about God. But I think the importance here is not only what we talk about, but what do we back that talk up with actions. I think that we could title this sermon without compromise. You know, without making compromise. I love the message that Paul gives to the Romans. He says, don't be conformed to the world. He says, you are different as Christians. I've often asked myself, would somebody be able to designate me or pick me out and say, there is a person of Christ? I've used the illustration before of a court proceeding and the accusation that a person is a Christian. Would there be enough evidence against me and you that we would be able to be charged and convicted of being a Christian? And many times, it's not just what we talk about, but it's our attitudes, our actions, it's our choices. We talked about wisdom this morning, and I was inspired by Madonna and by what I heard. And I thought, once again, it's not enough just to talk about it. We've got to back our talk up with actions. So what what was he faced here with? And the three young men, they were forced, and they had to make a choice, and they decided not to compromise their convictions. They felt like that this food would defile their body. It would lessen their ability to be spiritually in tune. And so they chose. They asked, and they were blessed to not eat this food that they didn't want going into their bodies. And God blessed them. And I thought, what about me and you? What are the things that we hold dear? Well, what are the things that we would say, I will not cross this line because I believe so strongly in it, and that I know if I cross that line that I might reduce my ability to serve my God. And you know what? It is as different as each of us are in here today. You know, we don't necessarily have food laws that we follow as Christians. You want to say amen? Because, you know, what if God said you couldn't eat apple pie? I'd be in some trouble. Or especially as a preacher, if I could eat fried chicken, you know. We all like fried chicken jokes about preachers. But God gives us so many blessings and opportunities and choices. But what we say, what I say as your pastor, has got to be backed up by a strong conviction that says, I'm not going to go there because I'm not going to cross the line that would lessen my ability to serve my God. So what is it? I asked last week, I said, is there anything in your life and in my life that would take precedence over God? Is it a relationship? Is it the things that I read and watch? The things maybe I do on the internet? Maybe the things that I do when I'm home alone? I was home alone yesterday. Lisa was here all day getting ready for Bible school. I was, reading and I thought, what would I do even when Lisa's not here? Just because Lisa's not there right now. Does it lessen, does it increase my temptation or whatever? And I thought, I better be the same person in the presence of Lisa and not in the presence of Lisa. I better be the same preacher on Sunday morning as I am Wednesday afternoon. I have no excuse to complacently reduce and to compromise. What do I gain when I compromise my convictions? Daniel and these three young men said, we're not going to eat that food. We're not going to defile our bodies, because when we defile our bodies, we're going to lessen our ability to be sensitive to our God. What lessens your sensitivity to your God? Whatever it is, God wants to root it out right now. Because the longer that you allow it to take place, the longer you allow it to take root, it will begin to strangle you. That's why Jesus gives the parable of the sower. And he says, some who grew up in the faith, who began to learn about the Word, who maybe were even teachers, perhaps preachers and leaders in the church, because the worries, the cares, the concerns, the vines come up and begin to strangle away without compromise. Paul says, do not conform to the image of the world. Jesus talks about the wide open door that leads to destruction. That's the easy path. That's the easy way out. That's the thing that makes us feel good. That's the thing that maybe others will accept us. But all along, we're just kind of chopping away at our convictions. What are the convictions that are so strong in your life? You're going to say, I'm not going to cross the line. We also have the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel. And they were challenged to bow down to the Lord, found in chapter 3, beginning with verse 8. And this story talks about, some jealous people. Here are these 4 little Hebrew children. First of all, they don't eat what we eat. You're letting them get by with that. You're letting them not conform to what you're saying we're supposed to do, Nebuchadnezzar, leader. Well, now they're not going to bow down to you. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen? They're going to get thrown in a fiery furnace. And it says that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into the blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who paid no attention to you, O king. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, it is true, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I've set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, if you're ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Immediately then we're going to bow down. Because we're not going to be thrown into this blazing furnace. Don't put me through the trial. It's easier to conform, isn't it? It's easier to say yes to the crowd than to stand up for what we value and what we believe. That's the easier choice, isn't it? But listen to what they said. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and He will rescue us from your hand, O king. Now I'm telling you what. Charles and Dolores would not be able to stand before us as a church and say, it is well, no matter what happens to me. Linda Raper wouldn't be able to come here and play the piano Sunday after Sunday. Debbie Hogg wouldn't be able to come and continue to testify to God's grace and mercy. Bonnie Anderson wouldn't have that beautiful smile. And she's not feeling well now. We need to lift her sister Bonnie up. And each and every person in here today wouldn't be able to come and say, you know what? No matter what, my God is still in control. Think about this. Think about this. The world doesn't understand this. The world doesn't get this. The world would bow down because they wouldn't want to face the fiery furnace. But these three Hebrew children said, our God is able. And even if we burn up in it, we're going to be in a better place anyway. Think about that. They didn't compromise their convictions. They didn't compromise their calling. Now I'm telling you what, it's not easy being a pastor. It's not easy. And I appreciate my church family for your prayers. I appreciate the leadership of my church family for protecting and hedging me and Lisa, because it's not easy. Sometimes it would be easier to say, I'm going to give up. I'm going to move on. I'm going to do something other than preaching. But for all these years, God continues to hover around me. And I believe it's in part because I have said, whether it's been a fire, whether it's been illness, whether it's been a financial struggle, I said, my God didn't bring me this far to let me fall down and to destroy me, to destroy my ministry, to destroy my church. Just think about that. When we say our convictions are so strong that no matter what the issue, we're going to still keep praising Him. We're going to still depend on Him. We're still going to love Him because He is who He says He is. There is none other. As Peter said, where would we go? For you have the words of eternal life. You're also going to be hearing about this week, about a story, again, of Daniel specifically not bowing down to the king in chapter 6, verse 10. And this is the story of now a new king, and Daniel facing the same things. You know, people coming up saying, hey, you said to bow down, and if you didn't bow down, you're going to lose your life. And in spite of it, Daniel said, I serve a bigger king. And so while the others were bowing down to the idols and to the false images, Daniel would bow down and he would pray. So word got back to Darius, or to Cyrus. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel, threw him into the lion's den. And the king said, Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. This was a king who saw the power of Daniel's God. But again, because of the crowd mentality, because this went against the liberal and the ungodly ways of this nation, in spite of it, a king who knows that Daniel is different, he capitulates to the crowd. And the first lie done, the king got up and hurried to the lions. When he came near the called Daniel in an angry voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, as your God, whom you serve continually. Did you see that right there? Whom you serve continually, not just when it's convenient, not just when I feel good, not just when I've got enough money to pay my bills and have a little bit left over, and not when I'm, having the greatest time at work, not when my family is not having any problems. It says, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions. And Daniel answered, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions. They've not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight. No, I've ever done any wrong before you, O king. Daniel, no compromising what he really felt strong about. No compromising because he knew he was called to a higher calling. He didn't compromise even with a commitment when he could have just for that moment said, oh, I'm sorry, king. I'm sorry. I beg your forgiveness. I'm going to bow down to you. He said, no way, not ever, not then, not now, not in the future. Lord, I am secure in you. How about without compromise, family? How about without compromise? This is one of those sermons that you preach, and there's no doubt that I'm preaching as much to Mark Wagner as I'm to anybody in this room. For this might be the greatest struggle to a child of God. Now, if you hear me at any point use the word perfect, not one time did I use the terminology being perfect. Linda, are there times where you feel very insecure with cancer, afraid, nervous? But your God is always there. Linda's not perfect. Is there any time that even any of us in here today, if the measure was perfection, then we all might as well just get up and walk out because we could not do that? We are talking about a deeper walk with the Lord. A commitment. There's a lot of garbage in all of our lives, and that's exactly what it is. It's garbage. Take it out to the corner, toss it out, and get rid of it. Don't let garbage rot away in your relationship with Christ. Check your commitments. How secure are they? How strong? How real? Not just to a youth, maybe going through a relational issue. Don't let compromise your faith in God, but not just to youth, to an aged adult. These are issues that are relevant. How about our calling? Are we so strong in our faith we're going to say, I'm not going to bow down to the things of this world. I'm going to remain secure and true in you. Even if the results are not what I asked for, God, I'm still going to serve you. Oh, you say, Mark, that sounds so good. And you make it sound so simplistic, and I don't need to because I know this is tough. But even if you're in the lion's den, and even when the world says this is the way you ought to do it, would you dare to be different as a child of God? Would you dare to not compromise your faith? That's the easy path. And that's the path the world would have us to believe would lead to happiness. Does it ever lead to happiness? Does compromising ever lead to anything other than aggravation and frustration and a hopelessness? We're going to challenge our children this week to not compromise, to hold on to God. And we're going to tell them great stories about Daniel. But I'm going to challenge my church family right now. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? Are you not only going to talk about this week, but are you going to model it? And I thought, man, how important the home is, how important our homes are. And once again, I was reminded, Michelle, Josh, and Jeremiah are three really great people. And I've always said I give dual credit to Lisa and me, but also to my church family, to their teachers and coaches who modeled it so well. And I thought, once again, they didn't always practice what I told them to do. But I've seen them do some things and say some things that I know where they got it. I didn't have to You know, I thought, oh man, they've heard their dad talk that way or say this. The power of mentoring and modeling. How about in your family right now? What are your children seeing? Are they seeing a Christian life lived without compromise? Or are they being confused? Are they getting mixed message? Are they getting a message on Sunday morning that we're going to be in church together? We're going to put on a good face. And then tonight, things are not, in their little minds, they're going to say, I thought we talked about this in church. Now we're in. Without compromise. Without compromise at work. Without compromise in relationships. Without compromise when you're sitting down at night and Facebooking or whatever. Without compromise. As I said, I preach to the preachers as much as I preach to the parishioners today. Without compromise.